You want more money? You're not going to get more money. I don't think that me the business. Time of the Susi of an and you're not both seen. We're going to start off Takas Chodesh Av. It's the Yartzteit. Which was the Rosh Yeshiva of Chachmei Leblim. It was called the Kojiklov Goyim. And he was before that. Where was he wrote before Kojiklov? I guess. No, before that he was also anyway saying Koji. He writes that he says why is Chodesh Av called Chodesh Av? He says because since it's the Yoim, the Yartzteit of Aharon HaKohen, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's memalish neseim of tzaddikim. That means to say he was born on their Chodesh as well, as Gemara says the Zechtas Rosh Hashanah. So since he's born on Rosh Chodesh as well, so it's therefore it's called Av. The Rosh Chodesh, this Chodesh is called Chodesh Av, and Midah of Aharon HaKohen. Aharon HaKohen is Shalom, is Oyev Shalom, Veroidev Shalom, as it says in Ovis. So therefore, the Chodesh Zokta is Mesugel of Shalom. It's a Chodesh Mesugel of Shalom. He says as well that the Zion spheres, the first of the Zion spheres is Chesed, and Chesed is referred to Shalom, is also which is Shalom. He brings a part of this reminder of Kabbalah. He says it's also called Shalom. He says it's Rosh L'chol Amidos. The Chesed in Shalom is Rosh L'chol Amidos. So therefore, the Chodesh Abolin or Toiva, this Chodesh Av is Midasai Shalom, and it's Nikra Av because it's the Rosh Amidos. But there's something very interesting that he brings as well in the Eretz Tzvi. He brings that the Tosfos Yantiv in Sechtes Ovis and Perik Hey says something very interesting. He says that it brought down one of the Nissim. It's brought down that for the Kohen Gadol that he didn't have that Le'ira Keri. It says the Kohen Gadol b'Yom HaKippurim. It didn't become Tomei. So yes, what's the Chiddush? What's the Revusa about this? He says since the Kohen Gadol was at the Toik of Kedusha, what would you expect? So he says wherever you find a Mokum where there is a Koyach of Kedusha, so you find that there's a strong opposition. That there's a tremendous, strong epoch of Kedusha. He says, as it's brought on the Zohar Kodesh brings Pashas Pudei by the Kamas HaMishkan, we found there was a tremendous koyach of opposition. So therefore, he says on Rosh Chodesh Av, which is the Shorish of Shalom, there's a tremendous opposition. He says Keneged Shalom.
So is the word the other way too? In other words, when there's Lahama koyach of Tuma, is there the koyach of Kedusha against it?
Always has to be like that. There always has to be that way. Wherever there's a koyach, it's easy. It has to be. Always has to be.
What I'm telling you, the internet, where's the koyach hatuma? There has to be that there's koyach kedusha equal to it. He's saying when there's koyach kedusha, there's koyach hatuma equal to it. I'm saying the other way around.
Grab on. So if you want to get kedusha, you go to
Tuma. That's what I'm saying. You grab it over there.
That's what it's complete.
Right. That's what he's saying.
I don't think it's always a balance.
This is where I got it. This is where I got it.
More kedusha, the more.
I wonder when somebody's against me, are they the tumor or am I the tumor?
That's like the more the
Sitra
right.
Sitra Achra is going to get
so he's looked at that's why, unfortunately, that's what it says.
Now it's easier to grab onto any little foot.
Okay.
Wherever it is. So that's why unfortunately he says the Beis Hamikdash was nechra after this chodesh. He says of sinas chinam. He says due to the fact that the hepach of Shalom, there was such koya, such a power of opposition against it. So unfortunately that's what caused it, that there should be sinas. Cause of the sinas chinam was nechra of the Beis Hamikdash. Very interesting. So we're speaking about Aharon HaKohen. Aharon HaKohen. It says the Rama Maitano said that the Hillel and Shammai were accepted from who? They accepted from Shmaya and Avtalia, and it says Habi Talmida b'Shal Aharon, Oyev Shalom, Veroidev Shalom. It's interesting. Hillel's the one that says it, because Ramami Pana says that from Gil he brings from that the Aharon, the Hillel were from the same Shorish and Neshama. So since they're from the same Shorish and Neshama, so Hillel understood the Talmida of Shal Aharon. So with this understanding, what does it mean? The understanding Talmida of the Midah of Aharon HaKohen. So the Mishnah and the Mishnah, the Bartanura brings the Ovis to Reb Nosson. And the Obzer of Nosson says, what was, we all know that we're all familiar with this medrash that says that what was the midah of a Aharon HaKohen? How is Oyev Shalom when there was a quarrel between two individuals? What did he do? He went over to him and he said, how much he feels bad about it. He regrets so much about the causing an argument. And if he would only know, he's just ashamed. And the next day, Gemara says that when he would see him, they would meet each other, they would hug each other, embrace each other. And similar to that as well was Mekarav and Latoira as well, was similar in that way that he was always, when it came to Yodea, when a person was over Aveira, he was Mekarav him, Mechaber his koyach of Ahava towards that individual, that he would say that if this tzaddik would have only known what I do, what I've done, then he would never want to be close with me. So therefore, that would cause a hero of tshuva, and because of that, says the Navi says, Amalachi, it says, B'shalom u'b'mishar holach iti. Shalom and righteousness, he went with me, the Rabbim Heishiv Me'avan, and many he brought back, he retracted from doing an Aveira. So Rashi says on the Navi, it says, what's mean B'shalom u'b'mishar holach iti? Who's that referring to? It's referring to Aharon, Elazar, and Pinchas. Because Aharon, because of the Maasei, although whatever came out, but somehow says he Heishiv Zakta Kol Shivteim, all the Shivteim Me'avan, as it says, V'yeswa le'ela of Kol Bnei Levi. He saved at least the Shevet, he was able to say. But again, it was Aharon, Elazar, and Pinchas. It's interesting, when I looked at the pasuk on Rashi, where did this come from? Why particularly did Aharon have this koyach? So the beginning of the pasuk is fascinating. The beginning of this pasuk that we mentioned, the Shalom and Mishar, starts off with Toiras Emes Befiu, Ba'avla, and no wrongdoing, Lo Nimtza B'sfasav. In order to be able to be makar of someone, in order to be able to inspire someone else, it has to be in a place when you're completely yerain, and there's this purity, which means there's a Toiras Emes. When a person looks at an individual, you see this, it's pure. You see it's genuine. You see he means it. That's Toiras Emes. Only then can someone be, as it says, Oyev v'sabriyos, and only then can be makar v'latayra. Only time when they see that it's true, when they see that it's avlo b'nimtza b'sfasav, then they're drawn to you. And if they're drawn to you, that's you able to be makar of someone. As that's why the pasuk tells us that by Yifkus Aharon, they cried Aharon kol beis Yisrael. And it says, even the Noshim cried, because how many we brought Shalom in Ishla Ishtoi, and as the Medrash says, it was Shmoinim Elef, 80,000 children that were named Aharon, just because he avoided so much argument between husband and wife. So therefore, Aharon HaKohen was zoicha to this level.
And so on.
Right. Zakta the Beis Yisrael, and it says, and there's a remez noah. He says in Motzosi remez noah. He found a remez noah. It says Samta Shnei Avonim al Kisvei Se'ephod. It says by Aharon HaKohen she placed the Shnei Avonim on the Kisvei Se'ephod. He says the ephod is Rosh Tevos Alamda Poshim Derochecha. The Rosh Tevos of ephod is Alamda Poshim Derochecha. Meaning just by wearing, just seeing the stone, that it would just give off that alam to teach the righteousness, that we would teach the derech Hashem, the derech HaMitzvahs in the Anhoga, just by observing individual. There's Reb Chaim Kaufman from Gateshead would say that he was from Gateshead. He would go a lot to Antwerp, so he was by Reb Itzakel of Peshwarsk, and they would ask him. When he came to America, he didn't speak much. He didn't. So they asked him, Rebbe, why don't you say a couple of words to inspire the Olam a little bit? So he told them, he said exactly this word. Amol, he says, sometimes it doesn't have to, nothing has to be said. You should be able to just sit, and it should absorb. Just from that alone, one can is able to transpire to the others as well. That's Oyev Sabriyos. There's Oyev Sabriyos and Karvan Latoyer. So b'schus al Aharon HaKohen, we should be zoichet to the Binyan HaShlishi, the Korov, as it says in Bnei Yisoscha, brings in the Chodesh Tammuz. He says something beautiful. He says, why is it? It's interesting. We just now joined together. We start. This is since Pesach. We had some. Why just now? Very interesting. Why did we wait till now? One of the terutzim that we found that is from the Bnei Yisoscha. He says because we find he says over here. Bnei Yisoscha says Kol the Eshel Likros HaParshis in these specifically now from Matos, Maasei, Devarim. He says which speaks about Chalukas Haaretz. It should be dafke b'mei bein Antzorim. Why? Because he says because these parshias tamid are b'bein Antzorim lahoyres avtacha Yisrael to give. He says avtacha promise to Am Yisrael certainty to Am Yisrael, the Eila to Chalek Oretz, that we should be Zoicha Bez Hashem, it should be divided in our days, he says. He says, Gam Parshas Pinchas also has Chalukas Oretz. He says, Kol Ma de Efshesh Yikru, in Bayomim Eila, anything we can be able to learn in these parshas, specifically in these days, he says, Kol HaMe'adim, Yisnachmo Yisrael, the Klal Yisrael should be comforted, but Oisiv LeMe'adim, and Chalukas Oretz, Hasidin Hayomim Eila Liat the Sasain, or L'Simcha LeMe'adim Toivim. So in Eretz Yisrael, it's very interesting. In Eretz Yisrael, they missed this opportunity of Parshas Pinchas. Because really, although it was past Shabbos on Shavuos Sabbath, but really, the 3 weeks didn't start then. The past week. Why not? How do we know it didn't start this past 3 weeks? Because we didn't start the Gimel de Paranusa yet. We didn't learn the Haftarah, we learned the regular Haftarah.
Last week. Last week,
I'm sorry, I mean, I'm going back Pinchas. They did. We did.
They did.
2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. I'm going 2 weeks. They learned Matos.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So, but since we postponed it.
We got both.
We got Pinchas and Matos. We were able to get Pinchas as well. Pinchas, the Mayadim also included. That's what he says. If you can, wait. Fine. Once we have that, now we can start. That we can join.
So that's why we delayed it so we can get Pinchas.
Correct. We can get Pinchas into the 3 weeks.
You know,
that's what we just said.
Inconvenience this caused travelers for the last 2 months.
Sure.
Just to put
People
Pinchas
wouldn't
in
travel
3
today.
weeks.
I
know.
No one has to travel. But anyway, Pinchas, you should get Pinchas. Get Pinchas by Adam as well. We should get included in that. We're talking about Beinam Tzorim, very interesting. And this year, we have this, that Tisha B'Av falls out to be on Shabbos. So there's a Tefer Shloim, Parshas Maasei. Parshas Maasei that says something very fascinating. He says, "V'savisen, you should desire lechem gvul kedma, the borders, the eastern borders." He says something taiva. You should have a desire. It says it teaches us toiva la'adam sheyesh lak upon him taiva la'lechet b'derech hayosher. You should desire to, at least you should have a desire to go the righteous way. He says, and what's the righteous way? You should be mitzapa legeula bizman korav. He says, as it says, tzion doiresh, there should be a drisha. You should seek ein law. There's unfortunately no one there. Machlal the boyadrish, as the Gemara says that, right? We learn from this in Sukkah that the boyadrish it does this. One should desire. He says for Tzion for Yisroel. He says adam tzarich lidrosh ulavakesh hageulah. A person has to. He says seek. He say and want the geula. And he says like this. Very interesting. Shabbos, on the other hand, is someone. There's no availus on Shabbos. Potter b'lisabel on korban abayis. Right? And it comes as we say. The Zmiris, we say, I have a Hashem, Hamachakim bevinyan Ariel. Right? I have a Hashem, those who keep Shabbos. Hamachakim bevinyan Ariel, B'yoyim HaShabbos, Sisa V'simchu. On Shabbos is Sisa V'simchu. Although it's Machakim bevinyan Ariel, but B'yoyim HaShabbos, Sisa V'simchu. So he says, Yochel, one would think that Binyan Beis HaMikdash is Doicha Shabbos, Tamad Achshav Soisa Tishmerish keep Shabbos. So he says, the mal of the Beis HaMikdash is that Shechina Shoyer B'Yisrael. B'yoyim HaShabbos, Gam ata, even now, Bezman HaGolus, Hashchina Shoyer B'Seichenu. He says that even Bezman HaGolus, it's still Shabbos Kodesh. He says, it's a miyat. He says, Bnei Yisroel b'madrega, that Shechina Shoyer among Yisrael, and Kol HaMasabel, but it says, Kol HaMasabel Yerushalayim, Zoicha B'roya B'nachamasa, right? He says, Zoicha B'roya B'simchasa. He says, but what happens, unfortunately, this is what the Torah Shlomo says. Unfortunately, he says, Kovid HaGolus, the difficulty of Golus, Ba'amala Parnasa, the Shverkeit Parnasa, Onu Chashuvim Ka'anusim. We're an oinus. Oinus Rachmana Patre. So he says, fine, oinus Rachmana Patre. He says, but there's still a problem. Fine, you're not going to get the oinus, she says. But what's about the schar? If I'm not misabel, I'm not going to get roya b'simchasa. So I'm not going to get an oinus. But what's about the simcha? Listen to this. He says, he says like this. Oinus Rachmana Patre. Av chloi zoi samrinan. Shayidei oinus yischayev shat kenegdei. What's about the schar? V'im kein heich b'mei yizka adam liras ben achama. How are we going to be Zeichen in a Chama? So he says, what's the Eitzel? He says, we shouldn't be set aside. If you're ma'anig the Shabbos, you get the schar of roya b'simchasa. Ki a mitzvah shel oinik Shabbos is ma'ameh b'zeh shashchina shoyer b'Yisrael. He says that's the nachla that you'll be zoicha to the binyan of Bayis HaShlishi by keeping Shabbos kodesh. He says, and this year is something fascinating that. And this year, specifically this year, on Tisha B'Av, he says, Nachla b'mitzvah. And he says, how do we see that? Because we say by Ritzei, we say Shloitei Tzara v'yagam v'anocha v'yoymenu chaseinu. Right? If there won't be Tzara v'yagam v'anocha, you won't be Mesabel. What's the result of that? There's Avareinu Hashem Elokeinu v'nechamas tzion eirecha. You'll be zoicha to Beis Hashem to nechama si and irecha. He says there's no tzara b'yagam anocha b'Shabbos, and not only that, it say Hashem again v'achilenu Hashem alekeinu. That's what he says. That's why we also say apayir sukkah shalom aleinu. If you apayir sukkah shalom aleinu v'akoyisov ba'al Yerushalayim, right? Ba'al Yerushalayim. Then what's the result? B'shamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbos. So you see, he says over here that there's something this year. We have something special about this year, and all the time, every Shabbos, person can be b'tzara v'yagam anocha, but that's our ticket, the Beis Hashem to the roya b'simchasa, roya b'nechama. So we find from here.
One of the reasons also that I would take out the knife.
Because
that person was so enraged about it. He was so excited about it bothered him about the
korban, right. He killed somebody. Right.
That's why we take out the knife.
Right, but I don't talk of Shabbos. You have to do that.
Really?
Because Shabbos, no, in the middle of the week.
I don't know the story. You have to show who got killed.
That's we hide it, right? You don't have a Shabbos. You don't have to do that.
No, but that's why we hide it.
That's
why we hide it.
Who got killed in the? What happened? What's the story?
No. In general, there's halacha. It says when it comes to benching, you have to. If there's a knife on the table, you have to conceal the knife. Because since the Bnei Yerushalayim, you might take it so serious.
Yeah.
It says the Gemara said it says go down.
What?
So, anyways, on that note, this is this Chodesh.
Oh. No. You're good.
So anyway, so Gevaldik. So this is this Shabbos. This is being maybe in Antzorim. There's a time of Geula. We have to remind ourselves of the Geula. We have to also be mechazik ourselves in the time of Geula, as it says. Kol roitfel hisigu ka kol roitfel, and he was being chased. Hisigu, right? That's the word. Hisigu ka will be masig hakadosh baruch Hu. Be masig hakadosh baruch Hu. This is the time where you can be masig hakadosh baruch Hu. Hisigu ka. So anyway, so this passage is Maasei. I'll just share with you a very beautiful, I think, an insight. There's a couple of ideas regarding this week's parsha, which speaks about the Menbeis Masois, which is it's brought down in from the Rabbeinu Yerucham brings down from the Rishonim. He brings this down as well. That is the Sefer, the Shuras Menbeis Shittin is in the Sefer. There's 42 rows in the Sefer Torah, just to remind us every time you get an Aliyah, everyone goes through Menbeis Masois in life. So just to hear, we know that the Mefarshim speak about this pasuk. It says Vayichtov Moshe es moitzaehem, which means to say because Moshe Rabbeinu wrote down a moitzaehem, it means it's place of departure. Limaseim to their journey, right? Al pi Hashem, according to Rabbeinu Shalom, the Eila Maseim, just the opposite. The Eila Maseim, these are the journeys, Limoitzaeim, to the place of the departure, which seems to be right. There's something very interesting, what's going on here. So it's very. So first of all, to start off with the idea is we have to go back to when we left. It says you got to go back to the Moitzaeim, from the place of the departure. The place of departure was in Shmos, right after he went out of Mitzrayim. So the Akdama of the Ramban over there says that the Golus is in Nishlam, it is not completed until the Yom Shuva Mim Kaimam, until when we return back to Makim. Where's the Makim? The Makim is Malas Aviseinu. The idea is Malas Aviseinu, which means to say we always have to have the rear view mirror. As it says over here, it's brought down that sometimes people they decide Maaseiim. We're trailblazing, we're going forward. Forget about whatever was. Forget about the past. He says Maaseiim, a new way. We're starting something new. He says Maaseiim, and then there's a Yid who is Moitzaeim, which they look back to the place of their origin. Right? What do you need? So he says, Ve'ela Zoktin Al Pi Hashem, Ve'ela Maaseiim, go ahead. But Lemoitzaeim, based on your on the Avos, based on your Messiah, based on your Dors HaKoyim, based on the Messiah. A person has to know that it has to.
That's what we always did.
That's right.
So that's the idea which we have. Person has to always remember. He says, as the Baal Shem Tov Taka would say, also Baal Shem Tov brings down the Degel Machlapran, brings from his grandfather. But the Baal Shem Tov, he says, you should know, I heard from my grandfather that all these Menbeis Maaseiim, it's not only the time of when Klal Yisrael, the entire as a Klal went out, but also each individual has to find his Masa, his channel, his Derech and Avodas Hashem, his connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his place where he connects with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Maaseiim and Moitzaeim. We find over here. So therefore, it was written in the Torah. So Bein Hamtzorim is also a time of Meitzar, which sometimes is a Meitzar, where Kadosh Baruch Hu sometimes it took us out of Mitzrayim as a klal. It's interesting that Aharon comes Oyev Shalom created Achdus, but he didn't create a Achidus. Means to say everyone were there. Achdus means we're all together, but not in one unit. There's 12 Yud Beis Shvatim. There's everyone has to go in their Mahalach and Avodah Hashem. But we all have to have with that same idea of Lim Moitza Ayam, Al Pi Hashem. That's the idea which we find over here. That's Al Pi Hashem. Each one will do it. That's one way, one Mahalach. There's another beautiful Mahalach that we find from the Ksava Kabbalah. Ksava Kabbalah was from Reb Yossi Mecklenburg, from the Gedolah Ashkenaz. He also says something very interesting, that the tight word of Moitza Ayam does not mean from a place of departure. Moitza Ayam, he says, and I'll explain like this. He says, first of all, we know the Rashi brings down from the Medrash Tanchuma. He brings a Medrash, a Moshel, the Melech. They says that we were a father and a son. They reminisce on their past. Oh, you remember over here you got sick, and here you were very tired, and here you became well, and they were going back. So Moitza Ayam means to their happenings, so what occurred, to their occurrences. The Moitza Ayam, he says, does not mean to where they left from, but what happened at the place. Moitza Ayam, as it says, he brings. It says we find Eskolat Lo Ashamatzosanu, which happened to us. We find, as it says in the pasuk. So he says we find that he says all the. It's very interesting. It was a midbar. There was never a yishuv. There was never settlements in the midbar. So where did they pick up all these names from? Wait, there was no settlement over there. There was no Chabad household over there. There was no place there, right? What was going on? What?
Sure, there was.
No. It's not this gewesen. This is not this gewesen.
There's no.
It's still.
Copy. The Goyim were selling them something.
No, but it's clear. It says clear. Was those loyo yemokam yishuv? How do we know that? As it says in the it brings a pasuk. Amalichacho b'midbar agodol anoyro nochosh soro v'akram loymakoim zera uteina v'riman utzmoin ashein mayim.
But somebody.
So there's nothing there. No. So he says, so what's pshat? He says no. So he says there was nothing there. So how do you? Where did you get Miska? Where did you get Har Shefer? Where did these names come from? Zokta the Ksava Kabbalah. He says that these are not names of actual yeshuvim. It's names based on the happenings, occurrences that happened at the time. That's what happened. He says the Ma'orois Ashachanabam, and he gives examples. He says Ysiroel misloinen in the Maasei, when they would complain, he brings a Yishalmi. And what happened was they had to place shomrim. Actually, that to place guards around the machna mipachad aleilos. That's what happened due to their nature at the time. It brought upon them pachad. It brought the complaint, brought about them worries in Tzoros that they named the place Misoinanin, a place that was named Mora. There was a place. It says the noisim b'machshava